Or I can make copies, I guess, of this.
Oh, I made copies of the other thing that I sent out
Of
for
your-
everybody, this one.
Okay, so then the only thing we need,
Is the agenda and then your stuff.
what, you didn't make copies of the agenda?
No,
Okay.
usually it shows up on our desk magically. That's the, so, oh wait,
So you have a copy of this, you've got a copy
Are we
of the
live?
agenda? You need an
Okay.
agenda.
I probably need an agenda. Thank you, Neil.
so we're getting,
Is Suzanne coming?
I believe so, I think.
Okay,
I don't
Nope.
know the
Not
answer
sure.
to that. She had said there were a couple of meetings this month she wouldn't make.
So
Okay.
we're good then. Ooh, I have a color copy with a real logo in it.
Ooh.
I have,
So patience, people, we're just doing our paperwork and we're gonna start shortly. Yeah, I sent it out in a ugly bulleted island doc. There she is.
Hello.
Salutations.
And then Naomi makes it beautiful. So Neil's doing some photocopying and then we'll start the meeting. But we are on, for those who are in YouTube land.
Okay, very good.
That is quite an iridescent handbag.
I love it.
It's my mermaid bag.
There you go.
That's what I was thinking, mermaid. That's so funny.
It was funny, I wore a necklace yesterday that matched the bag and I didn't realize I had done it. I'm in the eye doctor's. Matching. Good eye. Oh. I'll talk stuff later.
So what we're doing, we haven't done that yet, but you can do it. You can do it multiple times. We all pledge
I
allegiance.
know, really, it's
Right?
like,
No, so one of the challenges that Eileen put out was that we can have rich conversations, and I enjoy them very much for the next 20 years. But if we can come up with a process, something to start with by the end of September, then we can start tweaking it based on what we come across, maybe. And that was a challenge. It wasn't voted by everybody, but so based on that, that's kind of what the agenda is sort of driving towards that.
great, because I did print it out before I came. so
Very good.
Thank you. This was the one I
Very
couldn't
kind, thanks,
print
sir.
for some reason. So
this is, here's an agenda, you guys can share it.
Great, thank you.
Need more copies?
I'm all set, I think.
Okay.
Okay, now that we're all seated, I will call to order the Weare Ethics Committee meeting of August 23rd, 2023. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the agenda is sort of based on, like I was saying before the meeting, Eileen's challenge for us to come up with an initial process. Do we have any other amendments to the agenda? I might. So I listed all the documents from Neil's package that sort of, I thought might be something we can discuss. I'm wondering, though, if maybe the FAQs and is ethics issues a concern, if we need to sort of table those until we figure out our whole process.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna do that. And I don't know that we'll get to ethics code violation complaint form based on if we don't have the whole process figured out, but we can get there when we get there. All right, so we have minutes that were sent out Monday for the August 16th. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any amendments? Nope. Okay, all those in favor of accepting those minutes, say aye.
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 Okay. And then,
You need to ask for the noes too, madam.
I do, okay, any noes?
There we go.
Any abstentions? I had heard everybody, but I can do that.
And then you need to declare the motion adopted. Otherwise, all we've done is to hear voices and no decision has been made.
Okay, if that's how you like to go, we can say it's adopted, sure. I sort of alluded to this before our meeting, but one of the things that has made this board a joy, and I think what our strength is we all have different perspectives, different life experiences, and different ways of doing things based on our life experiences, right? That's allowed us to have some really rich discussions. I've learned a lot from everyone at this table based on those experiences. The flip side of that is the models that we have in our head, based on our life experiences, can be modified slightly based on conversations, but they're still, that's the model we're starting with, right? So, for example, the model in my head of what a chair is based on the school board, and the rules that we do based on what we do in the school board model. Neil has a very different experience based on a lot higher role in the state, a lot more stricter rules and different things. Luke has a huge different perspective because he is a Robert Rules of Order guru, and he can run the deliberative session even during COVID and manage us to get things done, right? So his model is different. We all have those different perspectives, right? So at the end of the day, we could talk for the next 30 years about how we think an ethics committee should be, then nobody gets justice, or nobody gets a response and doesn't get what we need from us. So Eileen threw out a challenge that maybe by the end of September, we could strive to get something that we can agree with. Now, I'm not gonna agree with everything personally. There's things that we talk about with what the chair should do that just don't fit my model, and they just will never fit my model. But I'm okay with trying them and then saying, yeah, this doesn't work, right? So I have that flexibility. I think we all do. And so what I challenge everyone, on top of Eileen's, is let's see what we can come up with. If we can't, we can't, but the rubber really meets the road when we actually can take on some inquiries and complaints. So with that in mind, one of the first things we were talking about is, could we take some of these documents that we believe we've worked through, we've agreed upon, and officially have a motion to accept them and put them in the rear view, so that what we can focus on is what we haven't done quite yet. So Neil handed us a bunch of paperwork last time. So I took the ones that in my mind, I thought we had sort of agreed upon, and put them back on the table to see if we could have a motion to accept, work through what we need to work through, and then put them to bed, per se. So the first one I added was, is it 6? Is there 2 6s? There's an internal process flow for the ethics committee that's different than this one. Actually, put the right number. It says internal.
Number 7.
Number 7. So what I was thinking was Eileen's process, I thought we had waived 6 in favor of 7 at some point. Could be wrong, and that's why we need to vote on it, so we have an official document, right? So with the internal process for ethics committee, that's 7, not 6.
But you amended C with
Right.
the document that you produced for today's meeting.
Correct,
Okay.
right. So I was thinking if we want to, I can table it, but I was thinking we could approve it, and then we could amend it, and then we could have that full discussion,
could
but maybe that's.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept the internal process flow for the ethics committee, number 7?
Number 7.
It's Eileen's document with the process
Oh,
for
okay.
inquiries.
I was looking at the agenda, it says number 6.
I know, I
so
messed up.
that's the confusion.
Yes, it is. And I gave the name for 7, but the number for
Right.
6, yes.
You wanna read it?
So
we all
moved.
know where-
I'll make the motion. We can then we can read it and see if there, so
Okay.
I'll move that we accept it.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All right, and then discussion. So, do you want me to read what's here now?
I think so that we know we're all working
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
same document.
I think that's great.
Wait.
So-
Okay. I
So,
just,
and I'm gonna amend it for sure. So read it and then amend it. So the chair or designate, this is the internal process flow for the ethics committee. The chair or designate will pick up all the correspondence from the Dropbox located at the town offices weekly. At the next scheduled meeting, for the ethics committee, the chair will make a motion to enter non-public RSA 91A:3, Roman 2C, to open up all the correspondence. The ethics committee will review all correspondence received and sort the material into 3 distinct groups: request for advice, anonymous or identified; request for a written advisory opinion, which is identified; and a complaint. The process steps: in non-public, review the issue. If the information provided meets the standard of a non-identifying person or party, this discussion can be moved to a public session for discussion and disposition. If there's information in the request that would be identifiable, now, this is specifically about inquiries, right? So you should not have identifiable information. So it says, if the information for that request would be identifiable, discussion related to request for advice will be contained in a non-public session. Once discussion and case disposition has been concluded in non-public, minutes of such would be sealed and advice would be reported out in the public session in a manner that would protect identity. B is the request for written advisory. Process is the same as inquiry. Written opinion would be contained within the minutes of the public session. C is blank, and so my amendment will be to flesh out C. I printed out a copy, hopefully y'all have that.
I don't think that this is the accurate,
Okay, that's
Document.
good.
because I thought,
Okay.
and bear with me, I'm going back into my email. I thought that we had a revised,
Oh,
and
good.
our revised was, we went into non-public to open all the correspondence, we sorted the material, and anything that would be identifiable in those categories, we would come out of non-public and report out that, we are gonna, discuss A, B, and C of whatever else we could discuss. And that we would also report out, we have received a request for advice
Okay,
that did not meet our standard of keeping the information not identifiable. And we're going to strongly recommend that the person who submitted this, please resubmit,
we did have that discussion, yep.
right? So I don't think this is the accurate one, so let me
Okay,
look.
And if I could
Yes.
suggest just for document control moving forward, if we put a revision
Revision date,
date
sure.
on each one every time, then we'll
Agreed.
make sure we're not fishing in old ponds.
that's true. This says, it's Neil's writing, it's a little messy, something. Eileen.
from Eileen.
From Eileen for the
8-2,
8-2 meeting.
right.
So I think maybe 8:16,
So,
There's something else?
no, I think we revised though, and bear with me. I sent it to Wendy, because it was the meeting
Maybe that
that
you
Wendy
couldn't be
wasn't
there.
here,
oh, right.
and.
Oh, so it was the meeting that you guys had without me?
Yes.
And you sent me a
And I
copy?
sent you a copy of
Okay.
this,
Let me find it.
along with the minutes of that meeting.
I did get those,
So
so we,
I would have sent it to you,
yep,
I believe 8/8/23.
that sounds right. All right, so I went with this package that had these numbers from last time, but
But
you weren't here. so-
Can I forward it to
Yeah.
Naomi and
And have her
ask
print it
her
out.
maybe, can I forward you something to print? Okay. Let's see.
That's amazing.
I'm glad you came up with that, Eileen, because one of the things I know we decided to do was to make all requests for advice anonymous.
Yeah.
And here it says, or
Right.
identified.
I think this was the
This is
the one before we decided.
right. So it's good that we.
And then
read these.
because I must not have gotten that, or I would have obviously put in the later one.
So to move this forward, would it be in order to
Well, let's
shoot this one down and replace it and then
see
open
what,
another one?
let's first see what the other one looks like.
I'm trying to do this in here, and it's not always great.
Do you want me to forward it?
Wi-Fi.
Can you, Wendy, if you have the ability to
do.
do it, if you want to forward it to Naomi? Thank you.
The minutes from August 13th, that email?
I sent it on 8/8 to you.
Which one's that?
I think.
I have the internal process. I get it on the 13th?
Okay, I'll go with that.
Okay.
You know what it was? I attempted to send it to you. I thought I sent
Ah.
it to you, and then I came back from vacation and realized that I didn't send it to you.
Okay.
That's what it was.
All right, Naomi, if you can print out the internal procedure, the second document in that email I just sent, then we'll get up to date. Say what? Yeah, for sure.
So I'm voiding this 7.
Yeah, voiding the 7. Should we vote to cancel that? I mean, I'm looking at it,
Well, the motion failed.
the motion, well, should we vote to accept this document? All those in favor of accepting this document?
No.
No.
If the mover will just withdraw our motion.
I withdraw my.
And I withdraw my second.
Okay, so this one's gone. Great. That's why it's good to have Robert Rules person here to keep me honest.
I like Wendy's rules. I think they're, you know, fun.
Okay,
They're Wi-Fi. Without Wi-Fi.
you got an Apple by any chance? Anytime I send something to Apple.
She has an Android, I think.
Okay, good.
No, not an apple.
Is it?
I say iPhone.
I have
I
Apple.
think of an apple.
I have one by each.
Oh. That would drive me nuts.
I learned to be multilingual.
Apple and everything, that way
See?
it just
That's-
moves
but
from
that's-
device to
These
device.
people gave me that, right? So, that one right there. Hope that it doesn't go off. 'cause that-
I might get fired if I have an Apple, because I work for Dell, which is a.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest, yeah.
All right, should we then move on to the next document while we're waiting for that?
Sure.
Get through the squirrel world. All right. Gosh. Which is why.
Neil had done the work, I think, of, you know, as we were walking through that internal process flow and shifting, making sure that the forms followed
The rules,
the rules.
right? Right, and so the next document, the Form EC-C:(I), inquiry request for advice and counsel.
Number 2.
Number 2. I think has been updated.
That one too? Oh, my goodness.
No, I don't know. So this says,
The-
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this one reflects the fact it's anonymous only.
Anonymous, yes. Yep.
So I'll make a motion that we consider for adoption Form EC-C:1. It says here, inquiry, request for advice and counsel, number 2.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, and we have a second. Do we have any discussion? So, do you want me to read this one as well? Sure. So if you are a town elected official, a town employee, a town board or committee member, or a town resident, and you have a concern about an ethical issue, please feel free to contact the Ethics Committee for its opinion. These concerns should be of general nature and not related to an identifiable person. The committee will interpret the code and give you its opinion and guidance. This process is anonymous. To start this process, you should fill out this form and mail it in a sealed envelope. Can we mail it? Yeah, it'll make it into our mailbox, right? So, Town Building, 15 Flinders Memorial, Weare, or hand deliver it to the Ethics Committee Dropbox, which we now know will be part of the taxes Dropbox. The community will review and respond to your inquiry in a public session at its next meeting. You can watch it on Channel 6 or YouTube, or if you wish, join the meeting in person. And now to begin, please describe a specific issue which you wish to have the Ethics Committee provide oral advice or counsel pursuant to Section Roman 2-1 C of the Weare Ethics Code. Please be as specific as possible. If necessary, attach additional pages. In the back, it reminds you that you should be a town official, a board or committee member, employee or resident. Circle which one you are, so that yes, you've read the ethics code. We will have that on our webpage, and believe that this matter is a fair subject of inquiry for the ethics committee. Thank you, and then you date it and you send it to us. That's the form as it stands. Any discussion? No. Should we change the, define what the ethics committee Dropbox is, like in parentheses? I think, is it called the tax?
It's,
It's an outside mailbox.
Yeah, okay.
but Naomi
She's
said
gonna
that
mark it.
it'll say tax collector and ethics
Okay.
committee or something
All
like
right, so we
that.
don't need to change anything, great. Any more discussion? All those in favor of adopting Form EC-C:1, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay, so that motion carries, that form is now official, our first one. I'm so happy. Now, the document 3 that I had was for written advisory. I thought you guys merged those two documents. Is that true, or do you still have a separate one for?
I think it was separate because that one would have a signature. And
Right,
was
oh, right, here, it's the
identifiable.
form right in front of me, all right. So do I have a motion to accept the request for written advisory?
So
opinion?
moved.
Second?
Second, great. Discussion. Do you want me to start reading it first? Yeah, okay, go. So you put your name, your title, office held or position, your address, telephone number, and the applicable provision of the ethics code you believe was violated. So for those who are not aware of this process, written advisory opinion is, can be provided by a town official, board member, or employee, not resident. So that's why all this public information is here. So it says, please be specific on which you wish to have the Ethics Committee write an advisory opinion pursuant to Section Roman 2-C of the Weare Ethics Code. Please be as specific as possible. If necessary, attach the additional pages. And then at the bottom, it says, I hereby certify that I am a town official, board member, or employee. I've read the Weare Ethics Code. I believe that this matter is a fair subject of inquiry for the Ethics Committee, and I will cooperate with the Ethics Committee in its investigation of this matter and will appear at the hearing if requested to do so. Please mail this document, and you date it, and you actually sign this one. All right, discussion.
I have one point.
Yes.
Just that we should probably do the similar naming convention to the other document that we
Agreed.
adopted on the top.
Agreed. I think we had said this was gonna be EC-C:2, I think, is what we had said.
Yes.
Does that sound? that ring-
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So we would amend the document?
Yep.
So I make a motion to amend the document to include a naming convention that follows Form EC-C:1, and name this document EC-C:2.
Okay,
Second.
good. Second, okay. Any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so the motion to amend passes. Now we're back to the discussion of the actual original form with the amendment. Any other discussion?
Were we going to have an email slot in there for contact for the person requesting the written advisory?
Oh, I know we got rid of it for the inquiry because it's anonymous.
You need a signature, well, we've asked for a signature.
Right.
And I
And who they
suppose
are
you
and
can
their title.
you can do some sort of an electronic signature.
Well, they could
But-
hand this in print, but if they give us their email, we could email them. But I think that, I think the discussion was we were gonna print it in the minutes, so the minutes are published, so we don't need to get it back. But I could be misremembering. Does anybody else remember that conversation?
I got to go to my process flow, because I don't remember what I even said. All right.
I mean, you could amend it to put it on here, and then we could discuss it, and, because I sort of slid into that automatically. Do you want to amend to add an email?
I would amend to add an email.
Okay.
Second?
Second?
Where is that going to go?
Like under telephone number, email address.
So we want email address and telephone number.
So that was
Both.
that's the amendment. So now we'll vote on that, and then if so, we'll add it. Any discussion about email?
Yes, why do we want this?
Better contact, faster contact.
So if we need more information, rather than calling them or mailing them, we could email them.
Yes.
Okay.
Another form of communication.
Okay,
Any other discussion?
Wendy, is it the internal process flow?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Are you still looking, Eileen?
I'm trying to remember, because we went through this whole iteration around anonymous, identifiable, stated.
Well, I think for just a straight inquiry, we said they're all anonymous, right? So for a written, we've now asked for their information, I think to prove that they can ask for this.
I'm not talking about the complainant, for lack of a better way to, or the inquirer. I'm talking about the content of the information. I think for both of them, it had to
Non-public.
meet a litmus test that there was nothing identifiable in either, I think.
Correct. No, you're right.
but that goes to the process that you
Yes,
wrote. That's
so-
not part of this form.
No.
Well,
Okay.
but the inquiry form said non-identifiable. This one doesn't say it. Is that why you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's do one at a time. So we have the amendment to add the email. Any more discussion on the email? No. All those in favor of adding the email address of the complainant, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so that passes. So then this document is amended with the name and with email. Then I think we have an amendment about, do we need to include on this form that,
Some more specific language about, well, and I think probably we're all better off to wait till we get the updated internal process flow, so I can actually look and make sure that I'm remembering
no, I think it's,
accurately.
you said, internal process flow, review all correspondence, complaint, non-public session, at the, we said request for advice is request, or request for written opinion is both section A,
Yeah.
right? And so it follows the same process.
Thank you.
We cannot take it up in public if it's identifiable information included, it says. So you're right, that was part of this process.
Thank you.
So this is the new 7.
This is the new 7, thank you. And this date is 8-something. Does anybody know what today's date is?
23.
Thank you. 23.
This is the document that Elaine wrote and Naomi just passed out is number what?
7.
7.
Okay.
It replaces,
It's the new
The old
and
7.
approved number 7. This was the old number 7.
is this the one that we approved, or we didn't approve this yet?
We have not
We
yet
have not.
approved
We
it.
tabled that.
We
We moved-
got rid of the old one
Yes,
because it was no
yes.
longer, yeah, and now it's for us to review.
So back to the issue on the table, is there a simple sentence from the document that we did approve that we could cut and paste to the new document that would suffice?
I think
I
so.
would think so. So, oh, that's the
I think it was in the beginning. These
concern should be
of the
general nature and not related to an
Yeah.
identifiable person. So are you making a motion to amend this document to have these concerns should be of general nature and not relationable to an identifiable person added to this document now called EC-C:2?
Yes.
Yes.
And where would that go?
One second.
Please be as specific as, but this is my whole, be as specifically vague as you can be.
Right. But this one also says, please be specific, but it says it right before This one says, please be. All right, so before we get to that details, do we have a second? Luke seconded, our discussion is where it should go, right? And so, should it be after of the Weare Ethics Code, but before, please be as specific as possible?
I think so.
Okay.
Could I have the exact language that goes in there?
Sure, it's from EC-C:1. So these concerns should be of a general nature.
Yeah,
And not related to an identifiable person.
okay,
Okay?
yeah.
Any other discussion on that amendment? All those in favor of accepting that amended language, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstained. Okay. So, any more amendments to this document?
Just a note, we're going to put on the bottom of this one, as we will on the other, the date of adoption.
Correct.
Instead of revised, it's just going to be adopted 8/23/23.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, so then back to the original motion. Motion to accept the amended document, now called Form EC-C:2, request for written advisory opinion with the added email address, the name, and the extra sentence. Any more discussion around that? Okay. All those in favor of the amended document, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay. So the amended document is now accepted and official. So we have two official documents. Good job. So we can go back to Eileen's new version of the internal process flow. Did we already have an amendment to accept this? No, we canceled that. So we have amendment to adopt internal process flow for the ethics committee dated 8/23.
You meant motion.
Motion, sorry, what did I say?
Amendment.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So
motion.
moved.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And so this document says, the internal process, the chair or designee will pick up all correspondence from a Dropbox located at the town office weekly. At the next scheduled meeting of the Ethics Committee, the chair will make a motion to enter non-public under New Hampshire RSA 91-A:3, sub 2C, to open all the correspondence. The Ethics Committee will review all the correspondence received and sort the material into two groups. A request for advice, A, anonymous or identified. A request for written opinion falls into that category. And letter B is complaint. So with those two buckets, the process steps for advice or written opinion, section A, in non-public, we review it. If the information meets the standard of not identifying a person or party, it can be moved to the public session. If there's information that the request would be identifiable, move to a public session, advise the complainant, anonymous or identified, that the matter cannot be taken up as there is identifiable information included. Ask they resubmit their request after careful edit to remove any identifiable information. And then B, the complaint process to be determined.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
I think B is supposed to be C. If I'm looking at the proposed amendment that you passed out
So my
today.
proposed was based on C. You guys, I used the old form, so my proposal will be based on B now.
Okay,
Because you
so we
guys
would change this to
combined,
B.
yeah, because you
Okay, on the-
combined A and B into A
All
on
right,
this document.
So
Could-
that's what needs to be modified?
Could I suggest that the words in parenthesis be deleted and the word "or" substituted? So it would
So-
be request for advice or request for written opinion. We've eliminated identified with respect to request for advice.
Okay.
So this is inaccurate and doesn't reflect what we've just done.
Okay, so we have
And the
we have
same thing-
acceptance and a second, so you want to make a motion to amend.
Right, but also the amendment should include under A2, striking the same parenthesis.
Okay, so you have a motion to remove the anonymous or identifiable information, and then it's say advice or request for written opinion. Is that the wording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Second?
Do you have a second? Okay, any more discussion about that? No? All right, all in favor of the amendment to remove anonymous or identified, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so the amendment passes to remove anonymous or identified, and then it'll say advice or request for written opinion. I have an amendment to talk about the complaint process. I sent a separate thing. We could talk about this now, or if you think this is gonna be a longer discussion, we could accept it and leave B as it is and amend it later.
This is to be attached to, this is part of the document, right? We're gonna merge these two documents at the end of the day, correct?
Right, so, I can find what I sent you. Here it is. So the first start, that section C, which should be section B, was trying to say this would be what I've heard as a process for the complaint process, and we can discuss it and adopt it. Since we haven't yet, as a point of order towards myself, I guess, because we haven't gone into discussion, do we want to adopt this document as it is and then later amend with the process for the complaint, or do we want to tackle this all now?
I'd like to tackle it now.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so I make a
Less
motion
confusion.
to amend with a complaint process, very sketchy, based on what I've heard, and we can rip the heck out of it, all right? So this says, this is my proposed amendment, oh,
You need your second. Second?
yeah, and I have a second, thank you. So, in a non-public session, we review the complaint. If the complaint does not likely adversely affect the reputation of any person, move to public, we can change the words to whatever, but we left that in. Move to public for discussion and next steps. If reputation damaging, again, not the right words, but determine if there's a non-reputational complaint. If so, can we move that to discussion for next steps? Otherwise, we determine how to proceed, and that's gonna be a case by case, really. And then in public, is the complaint in the jurisdiction of the Weare Ethics Committee? Is it an ethics violation? If so, what section? If not, we dismiss it and return with reason. Or the significant avenues followed. If not, return with the suggested next steps and put it on hold. If the complaint is more than 2 years old, we dismiss it and return it with that reason. Was probable cause established? If not, we dismiss it with that reason. Otherwise, if the complaint is ready to proceed, we provide the complaint and the supporting documents to the subject of the complaint and schedule a pre-hearing, which is a separate process, I guess.
So Wendy, just so I'm like clear, because I don't have that in front of me.
Oh, here, I made copies.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So I think what you just ran through, just for clarification, is like when we get to complaint, part of the process, the vetting process, is almost like a questionnaire checklist with what you have in front of you
Right,
to vet whether or not
we can move
we
forward.
can even move forward with the complaint. So it would be the rule out would it be in non-public or would it be in public?
So what I was thinking is if there's nothing that will adversely affect the reputation of the person, we move it to public. And if not, I was trying to figure out how we would say that verbiage, so we probably need to work a lot on that. But I think the discussion about this in the public session is it our jurisdiction? Were significant avenues followed? If it's too old, the probable cause, that should be a public discussion, I think.
Okay.
When possible.
Well, wait a second. In your process flow, number 7, number 2, we're opening correspondence in non-public.
Correct, and we put them in 2 buckets. See, we
Right.
do the request for advice or
Okay.
complaint.
And now we're talking about the complaint bucket.
Right,
And at this point, we're still in
non-public.
non-public,
Yes.
okay? So,
Well, so we're at B,
We are at B,
and B begins
in non-public.
we're in B, we're in non-public, we're establishing with the complaint bucket what we've got, we're sorting. Your assertion is that some of it, if it's not gonna damage someone's reputation substantially, some of that sorting process can happen in the full light of the public.
I think,
That's what I'm reading,
that's,
right?
that was what I thought I remembered hearing, that if it's not hurting somebody's reputation, we
Sure.
want to be transparent, and we
I'm
want to have
just,
that in
I'm not
public.
questioning, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
clarifying.
Yeah, yeah.
So that we would have in the complaint bucket in non-public, we would then do a sort
Right,
of what can we talk about publicly and what can't we talk about
Right.
publicly? Based on the litmus test of, is this gonna hurt somebody's reputation?
right,
Okay, so step one is in the complaint area, is the sorting of the complaints into those two categories.
right.
And but that's on the original 7. That's right here. We'll review and put them into 2 groups.
Well,
Okay.
we've moved, we had 2 groups to begin with.
Right.
With the,
We're still in non-public,
yeah,
and we have complaints.
Right,
Yeah.
so the first
Okay.
bucket is A.
And then I go to B, down here.
Yep.
This is, and I don't know why you got AB and AB, but in any
Because
event.
A goes to A, so if it's in a request for advice, this is
So
the
when
process.
we write this up, then I'm going to have to put this up here, and then this is going to go under here. This, subparagraph A refers to 3A, is that correct?
Correct, it does refer to
And
3A.
B, this
Refers
sheet,
to 3B.
relates to 3B. Okay, so I've
Correct.
got that. I
Yep.
understand that.
Yep.
So right now, we're non-public, and we have a bucket that contains all the complaints.
yes.
Okay? Now, I'm shifting over to this,
Yep.
correct? Okay. We're under 3B.
So what Eileen had asked for clarification was, I was saying, of those list of complaints, we need to decide if it, and I took this wording out of some document, but we could use the document, what we say for inquiries, but it cannot substantially, not likely to affect adversely the reputation of the person, right?
Well, we have nice language already here
Oh,
from
that's what I'm saying, we can
Eileen.
use your.
The A1, in non-public session, this is for complaints,
Mm-hmm,
review the issue if information provided meets the standard of not identifying a person, party.
But
and-
no, we can't say that because they will be identified. We can't,
We
so,
will
It's
have,
substantial,
it's substantial
Yeah.
damage to their
We're-
reputation is the
yeah.
The litmus test for
bullet number
complaints.
1 in the complaint process.
right.
So what's here is inaccurate. We need
No.
to change this language?
No.
Nope, what's there
for
for,
inquiry, it's
for
anonymous.
inquiry and for advice, that's fine. When we get to the complaint process,
which is B.
They have to identify the person because it's a specific complaint. But if the complaint as written does not adversely affect their reputation, because just by making an ethics violation, that doesn't necessarily affect your reputation, right? We could still talk about that in public, but if it's something horrific but ethical, we have to figure out what we need to do with that, right?
yeah, so I think we're in non-public, we're sorting complaints. The first litmus test of this process is, can we discuss this publicly without it having major harm to someone's reputation?
Right,
If that's a yes, then that goes to public.
right,
If it's a no, we're still in non-public.
yes.
So that's the first decision point. So then I'm gonna go to public session, right?
Okay,
Let's
good.
talk public first.
Yep.
Okay? So we've answered the question of whether or not we believe that there's gonna be significant reputation harm. So that's test 1. And then we go to public for test 2. Test 2, according to this, is, should we even be talking about this? Does this have anything to do with the ethics committee?
Oh, are you reading anything from
Yep.
here?
Yeah, I'm looking at
She's sec-
2A.
Two.
Okay. So you think that at this point, Section 2, A, B, C, D, I know you may have some changes in them, but all of those are what's going to be done in public?
Public,
Yes.
that's the
If
contention.
we've already established that it's not gonna harm somebody's reputation to do this.
Right. And if it is an ethics violation, and we know what section it is,
Like, so we may get to 2A and somebody is complaining that, oh gosh, I don't know, people do so many things.
Somebody's complaining about something which is not covered by the code of
There you
ethics.
go.
Okay,
That
so,
could be a legality or something that's got
Right.
nothing to do with ethics.
right,
Then we dismiss it and we say why,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
The other thing we talked about significantly was were and that we can, again, we can amend anything, this is the ordering. Did they follow sufficient avenues? We had a lot of discussion early on about did they go through that chain of command, and every group has a different chain of command, and there's gonna be some education there. But we did say that was one of the steps, right?
did they avail themselves of all the
Yes,
possibilities to address the issue
I like that
prior to
better.
getting us?
yeah,
And as a practical matter, we may find that the complaint doesn't give us enough information to answer that question.
Sure.
And in that case, we would contact the complainant?
I would imagine, yeah.
Because the
We need
alternative
Weare.
is to dismiss the
Yeah.
complaint.
right, so,
We could table it in,
so
Okay.
on this one, I said if they hadn't followed significant avenues, I suggested we could call it on
Return-
hold, right? And so that would be, we have more questions about what avenues they follow, but not dismiss it outright if we think that there's more things. We can do that, or we can dismiss, but that was sort of something I threw in there.
okay, so 2C is the age test?
Yeah,
Did this happen 27 years ago?
Well, here's the problem.
Uh.
At this point, we don't have the 2 years in any document. We've had the discussion, and it was in some documents, but the document that contained it, we said we didn't want to deal with, we had a replacement document. So, since this is a substantive issue, it's got to be in some other
We haven't
document.
looked at our complaint document yet.
we have not.
That's 4. We haven't talked about it yet. And so once we establish this, I think we can then
Jump to 4.
spend some time making sure that the things that we want to get answered here are reflected
Reflected there,
here.
yep.
Okay, but you don't have a substantive rule in a form. You have the substantive rule in some other document that we have.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet. though.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because there'll have to be some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Policy,
I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah, I hear
we're,
what
that
you're
we,
saying.
that we've got to cover that somewhere else.
we have,
Some sort of directions that we offer to
we
the
have
folks.
form, we have process, and we have rules, right? So this is the process piece of our checklist to say where we go forward.
And it needs to be in the rules, got
And
it,
it needs to be in the rules, and it also should be on the form, so that people are aware.
sure.
Yep,
So, okay, so
Is a complaint too old? Okay.
age test, and then, is there a date, is probable cause established?
Could you explain what you're thinking here? I don't
on
understand.
probable cause, so on the original form, they said, probable cause, meaning,
The one that,
Are you talking about rules?
no, it's from the guys from.
The 06
the
documents?
06 guy,
Ethical implementation.
from the OG.
Yeah. Hold on. I grabbed it from one of their original,
I think it's
This
on
is-
the
this one?
that, yeah,
Number 4 is a copy of, from
2006.
6.
No,
I think it was in the one that you had in your hand, Wendy.
this,
Was it like the one that the person who was an attorney wrote up
Yeah.
about what the spirit and intent
right.
was?
So I, again, introduced this to talk about, do we want to, at this point, decide if there's anything substantive that we need to move forward with? I wanted a question that said, it's not too old, they followed what they needed to do, it is an ethics thing, but there's nothing here. Like, there's no details. Do we just not, we can totally scratch that number, and that becomes part of the pretrial hearing where we discuss and figure out if there's substantive information.
But what is it that you were trying to accomplish, I guess is what I'm asking.
Following,
If you met the burden of proof,
Proof.
which was in one of the, I think it was in the document that Luke
But,
sent.
but that's a very, yes, that is, burden of proof is in the document that was done by John McCausland in '06.
So the-
But that was at the end of the day, not, that was at the end.
That's like hearing, like, did they
Yeah.
do this?
Is
So-
at the, after the hearing is
Okay.
completed, we have to go back and make sure that whatever facts we determined were determined beyond, not beyond a reasonable doubt, and not based on probable cause, but based on, what does he say? Clear and convincing evidence.
here it is, it's investigation of complaints by the Weare Ethics Committee, section, paragraph 2.
What
it
number
says-
is- does that
It's
have-
not, this is from 2006.
Okay.
This is their investigation of
Great.
complaint form,
Yep.
and it says, preliminary evaluation, make a determination whether we have jurisdiction, whether it establishes probable cause, and whether it should be dismissed or further proceedings. So I took it out of that piece.
I guess I don't understand that.
Okay.
I don't understand what it is that we would be asking people to do.
Okay, so we can completely, I just was reflecting
Yeah.
what that document said, we can take that out and make that part of the pre-trial hearing, pre-hearing.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish with this language, regardless of whether it goes here or somewhere else, and regardless of whether it's in here. What are we trying to do?
Is that tied to the warrant,
Well-
that language?
That is, probable cause is the standard to get a search warrant.
No, I know that, but I meant not search warrant, town warrant. Was that language attached to what they did in '06?
There was no
I don't
probable
think
cause in
so.
there.
No,
Yeah, I'm kind of with Neil, I'm not sure that probable
Yeah.
cause,
Yep.
I think we
Doesn't
could probably
belong.
strike that from here.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
we're already establishing what the bars are, you know,
we've
are we
said,
identifying a
right,
section
so
of the
we've
ethics
said it
committee
seems like an
or the-
ethical violation, it's not too old, they've done significant things,
Is it-
so we'll just scrap that line.
Well, wait a second. Let's assume that you have a complaint. And based on all of the information, even if you accept every single word that the complainant says, there's no violation. In other words, even if all of his facts are true, there's no violation. Are you trying to say that we want to reject the complaint? at
No,
that
so
point?
we've said, at this point, we've said what they're describing sounds like an ethical complaint, and they follow the avenues, it's not too old, but have they given any information about anything to say that this happened? And I don't know that this fits here, I mean, that might be more of a pretrial thing, that might be a hearing thing. I was just trying to reflect all the information that I had seen.
Got it. So, let's assume that they present some facts, but we say that even if all these facts are true, there's no violation.
That's different, we've said that,
Wouldn't,
go ahead.
wouldn't that fall under the complaint, under the jurisdiction of the ethics violation?
Sure.
What
Yep.
section?
Where is that?
That's under 2A of the document that Wendy brought in
Right.
tonight?
I think it does. I think we've said, yes, based on what they're
Well-
describing, it sounds like an ethical violation. But if they've said, this person,
Had a conflict of interest?
and they didn't announce it, but they have no proof, they're just saying it. Do we need a step that says, great, you say they did this, but that,
Well,
or that's a
it would be premature at that point because we haven't given them the opportunity to demonstrate
right,
their
right.
evidence.
Agreed. Agreed.
From my perspective, what 2A, B, and C are is the screening mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Right.
To get us to the
To the
next phase.
pre-hearing.
Pre-hearing.
Yep,
That-
agreed.
That, to me, if they meet that standard, we're moving on
Yep,
to a
pre-hearing.
pre-hearing.
Yep,
Right?
agreed.
So we can strike D
Do we
in its
strike D?
entirety?
Absolutely, yep, agreed.
From my perspective, yeah.
I agree.
Because to me, D, well, I don't like probable cause because I don't think that's the language that applies here, but, and, you know, I think that the question that you're trying to get to is, you know, did they meet enough of a burden of proof to prove that this thing actually happened, and I think that's what the whole hearing
Pre-hearing.
process
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
about,
Agreed,
right?
yeah.
So, the complaint says that Joe refused to recuse himself. And that's a violation of the code. Okay, so that passes to A.
Yep.
In the specifics of the complaint, the complainant says what Joe did and what Joe didn't do and what the situation is. If we read that and we determine, well, there's nothing in there which indicates that Joe had a conflict, what do we do?
I don't think we would know that until we really vetted it, and I don't think we really vet it in the screening part, right? Because we would want to give the person an opportunity to give us the information, give us whatever, a witness or whatever they want to bring forward, and that wouldn't happen at this point. This point, they've dropped something in a mailbox, they've dropped it off in a
But
Dropbox.
they've told us what their case is.
They've given us the
Broad brush.
30,000-foot view of what their case is. They haven't had the opportunity to have it heard. They haven't had the opportunity to show us their proof. They haven't had the opportunity to bring their witness. They
Right.
haven't had that opportunity. So I don't
Okay.
think you can rule it out
Let me
from.
let me give you a specific example, it's extreme, but
Okay.
this is what I'm thinking. Joe, the town selectman, refused to recuse himself in the awarding of a contract when it was going to his seventh cousin 4 times removed.
Yep.
Okay? If that's, this is, all the specifics are there about this. Do we accept that case?
I don't know, I think we'd have to talk about it. I think we'd have to, that would be, right, because people are trying to understand, what does conflict of interest mean? They're looking at the 5 of us to determine, what does that mean? How do you determine whether or not something's a conflict of interest? So I'm assuming that the 5 of us would listen to that, we'd find out that they can prove that Joe did award the contract to his 7th cousin twice removed, and we would, as a group, have to sit here and hash out, like, do you think that's a conflict? Like,
Right.
you
Is
know,
that too
and
far
that would be
removed?
the work of our committee, right? To determine, for anyone who's interested,
What
like,
other extenuating
Yeah.
circumstances?
That's-
contribute?
Agreed.
right? Like, that's the,
No problem.
I think.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so 2D is out, A,
2D is
B, and
out.
C are in.
I,
No, wait, you have to eliminate and see, is the complaint,
Age test.
yes, no, that has to be age tested, you're right, that has to be there.
one thing on B, were sufficient avenues followed, what we're trying to say is did the complainant make every reasonable effort to resolve this?
Right, and Jarl, right, so we need that language, like I
Right.
said. So can you say that slower?
Did the complainant make, I'll say, the appropriate efforts to resolve this directly? Or what we used to say is
Prior
at
to
the
coming,
lowest
prior
possible
to
level.
filing the complaint.
Prior to filing the complaint.
Okay. I like that. And then the third step in this process, if we're ready to proceed, you provide the complaint and the supporting documents to the subject of the complaint and schedule a pre-hearing conference. I couldn't remember if pre-hearing conference is always going to be non-public. I thought it was, but then there was discussion about should that be transparent.
How,
I don't think if we've already established that we're going out, that we're going back in. Like,
Okay.
it's gotta be public.
right?
Okay,
Like, I
okay.
think if we've looked at it and we've said, you know, this isn't an issue where, you know, I'm determining whether or not Eileen Meany, you know, took
evil,
money
yeah.
from, like, you know, some major, like, major thing that I'm gonna be without a job, you know, like that, to that level. If we've already, I don't,
Yeah, it can't
honestly, I
be.
know I said it, like, if we're out in public, I don't think we're going back under,
Except in exceptional circumstances,
unless
right?
it was
Something new
something
comes
that,
up.
yes, that some bomb gets dropped,
Right.
that you as the chair say, let's take a time out. Let me consider this.
Okay.
And nothing prevents the chair from recessing the meeting
Sure.
and having a one-on-one with whomever. That's
Great.
privately, I mean, not publicly.
Of course, yep. Okay. So the amendment to the internal document stops there because the pre-hearing conference process is not part of this document. This is
Right, so
the,
this is a separate
that's a
piece.
separate piece. I just shoved it in one page. 'cause I
But,
was
so
lazy.
we just went the public route. What's the non-public route? So,
Okay,
are
right, good
we
point.
doing the same thing in non-public if we determine that the content of the information could potentially have, like, if we determine, two buckets with complaints. One, this is okay to, we're not going to leave somebody penniless and homeless based on the content of this information. Let's go public. Same process if we determine that this is best done in non-public session.
Yeah, so what I was trying to sort of figure out in that section B was, could we get it rephrased in a way that couldn't damage people? And maybe that's just unrealistic, because if it's super sensitive, we have to have the ability to keep this non-public.
Isn't that, I'm sorry, but isn't that 1C?
Determine how to proceed, yeah. So,
So let me just clarify, 1A,
we
If
just
the
did the
ans-
public, right?
if the answer is that it does not adversely affect reputation, then we go to section 2.
Right.
Okay.
So the problem is if it's
If
sensitive.
it's damaging, then what is the, what do we do?
Right,
Also B, I have to acknowledge I'm confused by the language.
Yeah.
If reputation damaging, determine
It's-
if there is a non-reputational complaint. Are you trying to say, to parse it out and see if there's part of that that could be discussed, or
is
something
there
that we
something
could?
that we could work with the
redact?
complainant? This is my brainstorming with myself. Is there a way that we can tweak it in a way that we can have the discussion about the ethical complaint without damaging people? And I don't know that that's even possible. So that's my engineering side saying if then else. So I would probably wipe out B because it's confusing, right? And just go to what Eileen said. How would we proceed if it's really sensitive?
So B, C is out.
Gone.
So
B
B
is
is
out.
now going to read what?
Else determined. So I think Eileen was sort of mocking this out. If it's super sensitive, does this entire pre-hearing process stay non-public? But we go through the same,
We run the same litmus test in non-public that we would run in public,
right,
because we still have to meet those criteria.
Right.
Right, whether we're in public or non-public. We're still looking to see, is this something that is in our jurisdiction?
right,
Does it meet the age test?
right.
And what, tenet of the ethics code are we talking about, right? Like, that
Right.
would still be
And
the
they,
same.
did they, I can't even remember, did they convey the appropriate efforts to resolve prior to filing the complaint? Right,
So, it's 1A, 1B, 1C, right?
right.
Ish?
Right. I have a question regarding that. Should we determine that something is, reputational damaging, and we're going to keep that in private discussion, would we still not, in public session, acknowledge that we have a complaint, but we're hearing that in private or in non-public session?
I think if we're in non-public and we decide that something is reputationally harmful, and we roll through this, and make our determination that, yes, we're gonna take it on as an ethics complaint, and then we go into public session, we would then say, we've received 2 complaints. One of them, we are going to be conducting in non-public session. You're gonna watch us roll through our process. The other one, we are continuing in non-public. We've already identified that this is a complaint that we can hear based on our internal rules and our process related to, 1A, 1B, 1C, or 2A, 2B, 2C. But yes, I think we would say we've got two. One, we're doing in non-public. My opinion.
I just want to make sure I got this right. In non-public session, we're going to review the complaints, and we're going to put them into two buckets. Either it adversely affected reputation or it doesn't. Regardless of which bucket is in, the process that's followed is identical.
Right,
In one case, it's public, and in the other case, it's non-public.
right.
Right, and the only thing I'm suggesting is that in order to have a record of the fact that we're having a non-public discussion of a complaint, we would have to mention in some way, however we number them, we have a complaint, it is numbered X, and we're hearing that non-publicly.
Yeah, we'd report out a total.
Right, so that we're not accused of just burying it or not dealing with it.
Yep. That's my suggestion.
I think that simplifies it, and then I'll make it,
Agree, now how do we capture that here?
so, in non-public session, we review the complaint. If the complaint does not likely affect adversely the reputation of any person or some other language that people have that's better, move to public for discussion, next steps, else continue in non-public. And then in B, we strike in public session, because we already know what session we are based on what we said in 1. I don't like determine, I love litmus test, but that doesn't really work here either.
It's it's a screening.
Right, a screening process.
Yep.
And just say screening process, and we know whether we're in public or non-public because we just talked about that in 1. So the screening process then is the complaint the jurisdiction of the Weare Ethics Committee? Is it an ethics violation? If so, what section? If not, we dismiss it. And then the second one is,
We have did the complainant make appropriate effort to resolve this prior to filing the complaint?
right. And, go ahead.
So one thing it occurs to me that we might want to add this in a few places is, for example, under section 1A, review the complaint if complaint does not likely. What I would suggest we add is if the committee determines that the complaint does not like or will not likely. So that it's, again, it's referencing
that
that
the
we're
committee
making a
determines
determination
this.
on each of these things.
I like that. Okay. So, review the complaint if the committee determines the complaint does not likely adversely affect the
Right.
reputation of the person, move to public for discussion and next steps, else remain in non-public. And then,
And then the same thing under 2, does the committee determine that the complaint is within the jurisdiction
Yep.
of the WEC?
yep,
And then under B, same language, does the committee believe, or whatever?
the screening process, screening process, under screening process, the Weare Ethics Committee will determine the following, right?
Which one are you on?
So we're on number 2, and what Luke is suggesting is the complaint, that's a judgment. And so we should call out that the committee is determining
Yeah.
if it's in our jurisdiction, if they did all the efforts they need to do, and it's not too old. So rather than just saying, is this factual, is it too old, is it whatever, did the committee determine these things? So, this is my engineering background, is like, if you have 3 bullets and they all start with the same thing, you sort of move it up top. So I'm just parsing if we can do that and still get what you're saying, because you really wanted to say that we're determining these things, not fact, because
So it's
people
the
can argue
committee
that.
will determine.
The
Right,
following,
Boom. Yep.
yeah,
and that would be sufficient,
okay,
all right?
Right.
Just so that there's a vote for each one of those things
absolutely,
that's
yep.
referenced.
Yep. And then if it's ready to proceed, we provide the complaint and supporting documents to the subject and schedule a pre-hearing conference. And that would be the amendment, with lots of amendments.
May I suggest that this is so complicated that it would be impossible for us to vote on it because
Sure.
we have no clue of the language. So
So,
I or
See revised.
Eileen or somebody
Yep.
should take the opportunity to
to reword it.
incorporate all of this, and then we can review that at the next meeting.
Motion to table?
Motion to
What-
table, yep. Second?
Wait, before you do that, is there anything else? And I'm talking about above pre-conference,
Right,
the first
Right,
1,
the-
2, and 3.
right.
Well, can I just, it seems, it's an assumption here, it seems like we sort of agree on the screening process for complaints. I'm gonna write it up just to clarify it, but it seems like we all are kinda on board with that screening process, so
You're
I
talking about
understand-
this page,
Yes.
okay?
Yes. Like, I feel like we sort of agree that, and it's just a matter right now of making sure that the language is clear and everyone understands, you know.
And you're going to incorporate it into this one, right?
Well, yeah.
Good.
Because that would be the next logical thing that would go under here, right? And then after we can agree on the screening, then we would go to the pre-hearing
Right.
and what should happen
Right.
there.
So,
But I just wanna say, as I'm sitting here going through that, on the document that Neil had created, or, I'm not even sure if Neil created it, it may have
No.
been created way back.
Which
It
one?
was
Process?
10-1-06. That document that,
What number is it?
there is no number, it's, oh, I'm sorry, it's 4.
4?
Ethics code violation complaint.
Yep,
The two scribbles that I put on there just for my own edification so that I remember it 2 weeks from now is date of alleged infraction and what steps have you already taken to address the issue? Does that go along with what we're talking about for the screening?
Yes, because is it too old? Because you've got the date, and did you follow proper steps? Because they've given it. Perfect.
we haven't
We haven't gotten
addressed
there
it,
yet.
so
We haven't got
that'd
there
just be, we're gonna add that to that language when we bring that document up.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm hearing,
I
tell me
just
if I'm
put on there
wrong.
now.
Yeah,
we don't
so,
forget.
did you want to make a motion to accept the process but not the document, and then we work the document and we vote on it?
I don't
propose-
think we can because I don't think that it's clear yet.
Okay,
Yeah, I
And I
propose
think
that
if
we-
I write it, then it will be a lot quicker.
yes.
perfect, and then we'll talk about it next time.
So table number 7 in its entirety till the next meeting so that it can be modified and presented for reconsideration.
Right,
Yes.
and Eileen will send us a copy, either through Wendy or directly,
Yeah.
before the next meeting, so we
Yep.
can all read it?
Yep.
Right,
And
and
the
if,
next meeting's 2 weeks out.
Okay.
right, yes,
But
I'll be right on it.
I don't know about you, but I do it as soon as possible, because
52-year-old
memory
brain, yeah.
fades.
yeah.
52-year-old brain.
So, and then if we can individually send amendments, if you think there's something that was missed really quickly, we can do that through email, or do you want to wait and do the whole?
I think for me, and this is, like, I'm better, I'll send it out, red letter it, and we can do it here, because when
Perfect.
52 emails come flying
Yep.
through,
I hear ya.
I lose. Like, I'm at the point where I'm so accustomed to working in one document with other people that it's hard to go back to.
Right, and if there's a difference of opinion, then it's, yeah, got it. Okay, so we have a motion to table 7 and the amendment until next time, at which point Eileen will
Yep.
make everything sound pretty. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second, okay, all those in favor of tabling 7 and the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, great. All right, I lost what I was doing, all right, so internal process, do we want to look at the ethics code violation complaint, or do we want to wait till we have the process?
Well, I think that
Formalized.
the two things that Eileen mentioned should be incorporated in here.
So,
Do you think there's anything else in here that needs to be changed as a result of what you're doing?
I think for now, well, actually, as I sit here and read it, it says, please describe what actions you have taken to resolve the situation within Ware Town government before bringing it to the Ethics Committee. So that's already there.
Okay,
And I actually, so they were sort of on the same page. And then, date of alleged infraction.
So, do we want to make a motion to consider this, or
No.
we haven't got there yet?
Well, no, I don't
You
think
just-
I'm there yet,
okay.
because the applicable provision of ethics code asks the individual coming forward to identify what section of the ethics code they believe that, the other person violated, right?
Right, and they also have to say that they've read the ethics code, right?
So, that's on the bottom, it says, check, I have read the Ware Ethics Code. It checks all those boxes, but I'm sort of like, I understand why that's on there, because you want people to understand what it is that they think happened and why it would fit in there, so, I don't know, I'm just chewing on that one a
Yeah.
little bit, though.
So I think it's a good idea to ask them if they've reviewed it to identify what they think it is, but it would still be up to us to review it in entirely and say, we may say, well, they're wrong on their assertion that it fits 2, but it does
But it does
fit
fit
3.
three,
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think it's a mistake to ask them to identify where they think it's violating it, because then you get a better sense of where they're coming from.
Sure.
Just at the opening.
No, I definitely.
okay.
But
So-
to answer your question, Neil, I don't think I'm ready to say, yeah, I'm gonna add this, but as we walk through the rest of this process, we may find that there is additional information that we should have, like, something that could be in here, as I'm just spitballing, would be, was there anyone else, present when this happened, or,
Right, where did it happen?
where, yeah, like
Right.
what, please
Is it on
describe
YouTube?
the specific conduct alleged. Be as
Yep.
specific as possible, include dates, times, places, and a list of any witnesses and/or supporting documentation or other evidence. If necessary, please attach additional pages.
That's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, yeah. Complaint explains concerns. Would you wanna know what the other parties leading up to them coming to us gave them for remedy?
Well, I think that's covered in the question of, did they try to resolve it? If they say yes, then that would come up in the discussion, but I don't know that you'd ask them up front to list all of the discussions that they had,
That-
in detail.
I think we also need to not try to overburden potential complainants with a form that is off-putting in its complexity, length, et cetera.
That might be part of that pre-hearing conference, right, where we say, this is,
So, but would that be where we would put that part, right? Like, we'd wanna know a little bit more?
Well,
In the
there are a
pre-hearing
lot of
conference.
things that we're going to want to know depending upon the individual complaint that isn't going to be covered
On the form.
necessarily on the form. So the virtue of a pre-hearing conference is that all of these issues can come out. Besides, we may learn more at the pre-hearing conference about the facts and so forth than was actually in the complaint form itself. This is pretty decent.
I agree with Neil. I think that document, I think, may be ready to move, unless there's an objection that doesn't fit with something we've talked about so far.
But let's hold this because Eileen's coming up with that amended process thing, and in case anything in there requires a change in the form, we can do the form in 2 seconds afterward, if
Fair enough.
nothing is.
Fair enough. if again, just to reiterate, if we, on these other documents, if we could just make sure, Eileen, when we're circulating, that they have like today's date on them, that we discussed them, so that I'm not confused with my pile of paper.
Absolutely, I'm reading the back, which was written in '06. Quote here. If the committee determines that there is probable cause to believe that there has been a violation of the ethics code, the subject of the complaint shall be offered an opportunity for a
Yes.
hearing before the committee. That's
Yep.
where you pulled it, Wendy.
That's where I pulled it from. Yep.
And that seems to be saying,
It's up to them if they want a hearing.
no, that seems to be saying they have to offer enough evidence for us to think it's worthwhile going forward. Isn't that what
Nope.
that says?
It says the subject of the complaint. So if you've complained about me being unethical, and I've been in a pre-hearing and I've heard that stuff, I don't want a hearing, there's no hearing. That's how I read it. Or maybe not. Is that how you read it?
So down around and then the men's room straight ahead.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is because we struck that phrase from everything else. It exists on this document.
Right.
And so
So,
we
Well,
may
we
want to get language,
Okay, we haven't decided whether to include
this
this,
back piece.
this back piece.
so I added it to that sort of pre-hearing conference process, which is really even vaguer than the first piece. So we can table that whole thing till we have the first part. But I added it saying the initial process says investigation of subject complaint shall be offered the opportunity for a hearing. So if that was voted on, if that's fact, then after the pre-hearing, if that person says, I don't want a hearing on YouTube, airing all my dirty laundry, there's no hearing.
There's a whole section in here. I mean, like, I think we need to spend some time
Yeah.
on this
Yeah,
next time, because this,
that's where we get the whole hearing piece.
well, beyond that, the existence and status of a complaint are public data. In accordance with the provisions of New Hampshire RSA Chapter 91A3, 2C, all other information regarding the complaint and any related hearing shall be considered non-public while the matter is under consideration by the committee. It shall
I
remain
saw that,
so
yeah.
until dismissed, or until the committee determines that the RSA provisions don't or no longer apply, or until the complaint report is transferred for possible action to a department head or the Board of Selectmen, et cetera, as deemed appropriate.
But
This-
that's
but this is what
2006
we've-
language, right?
No, but the 2C is adverse effect on reputation.
So I hear that, I'm just saying that
They said they
They
were
said
keeping it all private.
It's non-public.
that whole thing is non-public until,
They've made a ruling,
and we're saying it's non-public.
right.
So I think we need to spend some time on that piece of it, like,
Wait a second. How could we possibly think that the decision is non-public?
that's what I'm asking, do we?
No. I mean, the decision, even if a reputation is adversely affected, once the decision is reached, whatever that decision is, there will be an impact, there may be, depending on the decision, an impact on reputation, and that's a public matter. That's a public determination. Not how we reached it, not all the evidence, because presumably, if we came to the conclusion that there was no violation, and therefore no damage to reputation, releasing that publicly does nothing.
So what we're talking about is under the investigation and complaints as a whole, like, it's all non-public until we make up our mind. That's different than what we've decided.
Right.
I think this is really what Eileen and you have written in your process.
Yeah, I'm just chewing on this last part. Because this,
So we're gonna waive RSA 91-3:3 if we're saying there's no public opinion, which is what our process is. If there is, we're saying we're gonna stay in non-public until we,
What I think Eileen is saying is that we really haven't decided when to come out of non-public and what we do with our decision where a complaint adversely affects reputation.
sure,
And here, the former committee has made a statement, this is what they're going to do.
yeah, So,
And the question is, should we,
So maybe that's what we should talk about for the next,
well,
well, there's a couple
Eileen,
things.
could you, going off on your own, whatever you wanted to do, include all of this in that sheet that you're doing up?
I think until we decide, like, up until we get to that point, sure, but that's a decision point that we haven't made. And so it's an agenda item, I think, for us.
Yeah,
So-
but we gotta, well, then let's start discussing it now so that the document we get from you is complete.
Okay.
I think that's critical, right? I mean, because we'd like to,
So is the question, as I understand it, that if we have a hearing or we've got a case, a complaint that comes before us, we determine that there's information that could damage a reputation. However, we go through that process in non-public session, and at the end of that, we determine a complaint was valid. Then we would publish the complaint, and as Neil said, at that point, well, reputational harm is no longer really the question. Public interest overrides that, because assuming, I think the idea is that we're trying to make sure that no one's reputation is damaged without cause, right? That they didn't already damage their reputation through their own actions, and we're just exposing that.
so stepping through the process. We've done the whole determining blah, blah, blah. Then we have a pre-hearing, then we have a hearing, and then we have a publish of determination. So on the sensitive nature, is your question, where in that entire flow do we then make it public? Is it after the hearing or after the pre-hearing? Or
And in what form?
in what form? Yep.
And to whom, right? Like, so in this, it talks about releasing the finding
To
for possible action
the department head or the
to
board
a
of selectmen?
department head or the board of selectmen
As
as
deemed
deemed
appropriate.
appropriate.
Yep.
So do you do non-public to non-public? Because it could be a personnel-related item. Do you do, non-public to public to Secretary of State's office because it's an elected official? I think each of these has its own, it's not that black and white. Like,
Right.
if you've got a personnel-related matter and we need to release something to the town administrator that's related to an employee, that's a personnel-related matter.
But at the end of the day, if we as a committee determine that there was an ethics violation by a town employee, that would be a matter of public record. And so we can't exclude that from the public record because it's uncomfortable, or, it's.
I'm not worried about uncomfortable, I'm worried
No, it's
about illegal.
Yeah,
Right, but again, we're making a determination as a committee that we think that the code of ethics was violated in town.
Yep,
That's it.
yep.
So we're not impacting their pay, we're not impacting their employment conditions, we're just saying that we, as a separate committee with this set of rules that they may or may not be aware of, and would come through the HR process where they appropriately advised of the rules that they, et cetera, that's a separate matter. Our question is, if this person did this thing, does that violate these rules? Yes or no, in our opinion, and that's it. But I think that our determination would be a matter of public record, and then we would refer it to, if appropriate, to whatever body.
Let me just read something here. Okay? The existence and status of the complaint are public data, which means we received the complaint and we acted on the complaint.
Yep.
Okay, that's public.
yep.
And I don't know if that includes the names of the individuals involved, but that's a separate issue.
Okay.
All other information shall be considered non-public while, if this is a 2C action, while under consideration, it shall remain non-public until dismissed, or the committee determines that the RSA provisions don't apply, or the complaint report is transferred for possible action to a department head or the selectman. At the time of such transfer, the report recipient, the selectman or the department head, will assume authority for assessing the justification for continued confidentiality. So we have not made it, this is what this says.
So
We
we're
have not
still
made
in
it public.
non-public.
It's still non-public.
That's what I
Okay.
needed to understand.
With respect to the RSA provision and other employment agreements, barring such affirmative assessment, okay? So the selectmen say, nah, and the supervisor says, nah, the committee's report will become public information. And the person making the complaint will be notified.
I think that's appropriate.
We should probably let them know that, though.
Let whom know that?
The people that were, right, like, you know, I think about us submitting, like, I think when we get done to advise Board of Selectmen, whoever else, like, you may get information material from us, it's gonna come, you know, and I believe that they'll have to go into non-public to accept it. So the chair will have to go to the Board of Selectmen meeting and say, I have a report from you from the Ethics Committee.
Non-public.
You need to elect, you know, to go into non-public. And then, but to inform them, like, hey, we're gonna be bringing you stuff. You're gonna have to go into non-public to take it. What you do with it at that point is up to you. It's your determination whether or not you stay in non-public or go into public with the findings of that.
Is that in both cases? That is to say, if we find a violation or if we find no violation?
It said if, right? Like if it was an affirmative?
Where are you reading?
I think you just read it.
Yeah, but there were a lot of stuff.
It says, it shall remain so in non-public until dismissed, or until we determine it's no longer applied, or we hand it off. So we're not gonna hand it off if we've dismissed it. At that point, that becomes
What
public.
does dismissed mean?
Means we've said there wasn't cause, or
We've
it was
not
too
found a
old,
violation.
or it wasn't an ethics violation. All that
So
checklist.
dismissed.
So Joe accuses Mary of violation of the ethics complaint, and we dismiss it. So that becomes public.
Yep.
Joe accused Mary, and the details?
Well, I'm not sure that we're required to put everything out there that's in the non-public session, other than our determination, and then there's a process for that.
So we would simply say, Joe brought a complaint against Mary for violation of the ethics code. The department found there was no such violation and dismissed the complaint.
Dismissed, it was dismissed.
And that's it.
That's it.
We don't say anything about where, when, why.
Right.
Nope.
That would be my best
Yes,
guess.
ma'am.
Okay.
Did that happen in public or not public?
Non-public.
Non-public.
No.
Oh, wait.
No,
Well,
that's public.
Once we've dismissed it, it becomes public.
Right.
So what we're saying is what becomes public? Is it just the fact that we had a non-public?
We had a complaint, and we made a decision
And,
that it wasn't
A violation.
a
It
violation.
was considered sensitive in
End of
nature, so we
discussion.
had the discussion in non-public. The result was we've waived it. So that then is entered in our minutes that we had it, and then it was dismissed.
But we do not repeat the allegation.
Right.
No.
Okay. Now it turns out that we find that there was a valid complaint, there was a violation. Okay, since this is non-public because it's a 2C issue, we hand that, nothing's announced publicly, we've reached our decision, we hand that over to the selectmen. Does the complainant and the respondent get a copy of that?
Of the decision?
It says the
Of
committee will
whatever.
report that the person making the complaint will be notified of the committee's finding and recommendations.
So yes, I would think we would have to notify that we've made a decision.
The person
So-
filing the complaint.
Whether, if we dismiss it, we notify both, we make the fact of the dismissal public, and we notify both parties. If
We sustain.
we find that there's a violation, this is under 2C,
Yeah.
we don't make it public.
Well,
We hand it off to the selectmen or.
And they decide.
Right. Do we notify, at that point, it's still in our hands, so to speak, do we notify the complainant and the respondent of our decision?
I think
According
the
to
answer
that,
is
yes.
yes. But I also think that we would have had some public record that there was a complaint,
Yes.
right?
That's,
So
and the complaint is Joe's name and Mary's name are mentioned?
What I would do is by number. We've received an ethics complaint. The committee determined that it was, needed to be heard non-publicly. We've made a decision on that complaint,
will
and I
be.
think at that point, we'd have to make the determination, how much information do you provide so that, the
So
interest
at
of the
that
public
point, we
is
said
upheld.
in complaint 4X, there was a finding of violation of section such and such. And that's it.
And that's it, and it has been
And has been forwarded.
forwarded to X committee.
So only the complainant and the respondent have actual knowledge of the decision.
Right.
Of course, we don't even have to notify them because they know their case number. We've already announced the case number publicly. Okay.
So then the other third,
So we're handing this off to the selectmen or the,
yes, ma'am?
Go ahead.
no,
I
we're
was gonna
handing
say,
this,
the third thing is also if we no longer consider RSA, so as we get into this, we can say this isn't reputation damaging, and then we can open it and to move it to public. That was the third
Right.
criteria, right? You were going to say.
I need to verbalize these
Yeah, yeah.
things to fully understand them.
Absolutely.
There was something in there that I was worried about. So the ones that we, are in non-public about, that we're gonna come out and say whatever, something about publicly.
We've found there's a case
We've either
for,
dismissed it, or we've made a determination that there was a violation. And if it's not something that we would refer on to another committee for resolution, we would just, that would become public at that point, right?
If we dismiss it, right, let's say we dismiss it, and, union leader reaches out, and says, I'd like to file a 91A for case X, whatever. What's our response?
A town
Wait,
attorney?
is this is it a 2C case or not?
It's a case that we
handled in non-public.
Dismiss.
handled in
And we've
non-public and
sealed all the
dismissed.
documents as
Then-
part of being in non-public.
The answer is to the union leader that it's
They need to talk to the town attorney, not us.
it's covered under the right to know law, and this is an exemption, and there is no right to know this based on the right to know law. So the answer to them would be no.
So what I'm gonna recommend for us, or recommend that we discuss recommending for us, would be, once we write this all up, that process gets reviewed
Yes.
by town council, so that I am sure that we're in scope.
Yes. In fact, one of the things on my checklist was like 2 weeks before the end of September, we need to have a list of all the questions following, providing
Okay.
these processes should also be part of that.
But I think Eileen is suggesting something even broader.
Well, no, I'm saying, I think you're right, once we write it all up, like, this is our proposal of how we're gonna roll. And then that package, including our process documents, our, all of
Our
it be
forms,
reviewed,
our-
our
yep.
forms, so that, when we're outlining for people, right, like, I think about informed consent, right? Anytime you enter into, so I'm an addictions counselor by profession. People come see me, I have a document that talks about, this is what you're entitled to when you see me. I can't tell anybody about anything unless these 3 things happen.
Sure.
Then all bets are off. I'm gonna break your confidentiality.
Yep.
And you can be assured that I will break your confidentiality, and this is what it'll look like.
Yep.
So that everybody knows the parameters. So I think it's important, like, I'm sitting at home, I wanna make an ethics complaint, but I go back to, once you make the complaint, it is questionable about what can happen with the information.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
And so, how far that can go.
Correct.
So, and I think somebody at the beginning of that process needs to know fully
Right.
if A, B, all the way through it before they even pull the pin on deciding to avail
Correct.
themselves of our process.
Right,
So
so
I
we need
wanna
a
make
process, we need to make
sure-
sure it's legal, and then we need to communicate it,
So-
the public-facing document, yeah.
So we're really going to make sure that nobody ever files
No.
anything.
What we're gonna make sure is that when people file something, they know exactly what to expect from us.
And the net effect of that is going, I think, is going to discourage an enormous number.
I don't know, we've had this problem with the school board forever, like, people would like to do anonymous complaints about people all the time, and it's like, but you can't. So you can come before us, and we will absolutely have that discussion. If it's sensitive in nature, we do it in non-public, and your name doesn't come up because it doesn't come up, or it's all in the sealed minutes. But if it's a public discussion, you need to introduce it, and some people won't do it, but usually they'll find somebody who will do it, right, if they care that much.
And the nature of a ethics complaint is like any complaint, it's public. If you're going to have the audacity, if you will, to come forward and say, this is a complaint, you need to do so in the public, forum, which is what we are. It's only in those cases where there's reputational harm until we determine that, that you don't want to just have somebody, tarring and feathering people before there's any due process at all, then we would hold back. But at the end of the day, it's a public process. But I agree with Neil that we need to be very careful to not make it seem so onerous or threatening in our language
And
that
that's
they
not
feel
what-
like they're gonna be exposed
No, but
by bringing something forward.
But I do think people need to understand, when I enter into something, this is what I can expect. I do think that people should be advised of their rights.
And I think that the frequently asked questions part may be a place to deal with some of that.
So I want to, in writing this, right, because I'm writing steps in the process, I want someone else who would be the person if, we end up getting ourselves in hot water on this, would be the one to say, no, it was clearly written in subsection 2 that this is what was going to happen. And so that's why.
So that somebody can't sue that you released my name when I made a complaint.
I think Eileen's absolutely right, that once we have this packet of materials
Yeah.
done, we send it off to the attorney. We don't even have to ask any questions and just say,
Look, take a hot look.
are there problems
Yep.
here that we should be aware of?
Where are we not clear enough?
Yep,
How-
absolutely.
What's the word that we could change that would clear up any ambiguity about
Right.
what someone can expect?
Yep,
Okay.
like it. All right, so we're not going to,
I feel better about this after that read. I
oh,
don't.
okay.
I agree.
I really do, because it was unclear to me. We are making a determination. What happens with that determination is a whole other ballgame. Not for us to really
Right.
decide. And then that's the other part of it. When we we had talked about the determination, and then the statement recommendations have been thrown out there a couple of times, right? And the recommendations typically have to do with educating legislative bodies about ethical concerns, right? So when we decide, and I know that I'm jumping 3 steps ahead of where we are currently, but when we decide, yes, this was a violation of this and that, is that where it stops? Or is there we recommend that, as a part of employee orientation, this and that, to avoid any potential mishap in the future? Is that gonna be part of what we do, or are we gonna leave it at, yes, they violated?
I think we should make a recommendation.
I think that that's something that will depend upon the case, and I would rather not tie our hands in any way
Yep.
at this time, because to me, it's too
depends.
indefinite.
Yeah.
There are many things that I think that the committee probably will face that are not covered in anything that we've
Agreed.
discussed. And so,
But from a consensus perspective, I do think we may have other advisory things, whether that's part of the process. I think I agree with Neil that we don't want to tie our hands and say we have to boil the oceans and fix.
Well, and I think also we may reflect that part of our role is the education of all these, and if we discover that there's a big hole in our education for town employees or whatever, then it would be up to us to add that to the next year's
Education
training.
piece,
so
yeah.
we're talking about education in spring of '24?
Hopefully that we've got that nailed down before then, right?
Is that in, let me see, April of
Yes,
24?
yeah. So who's got the 1-year term?
I was gonna say, I've got a 2-year term, so.
Okay. Oh, you're gonna sign up again, you're fine. Okay, so,
I'm Susie Q. Public. Yeah.
so my pre-trial hearing was just scratch notes, so I kind of want to either waive that, or you can look at it and see if you want to take a stab at it.
I got it, like, from where I'm sitting right now, I think I've hit saturation
matched
point
it.
with
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to figure out.
Okay, I think that's fair. Do we want to, I know it's 8 o'clock almost, so, I know Neil, Luke had an amended document and Neil did some work based on that. Do we want to tackle that, or do we want to move that to, knowing that we have a month?
Let me suggest that since Luke was the author of the document that I incorporated into this document, and he has not had a chance to really consider this, it might be better off if we discuss this at the next meeting, because I'm sure Luke, Luke may have some changes that he thinks need to be made.
This document here is the one that you modified with what I had sent out by email last week, correct? The rules regarding the conduct of the hearing?
Yes, and I'm gonna call that 10.
I'm gonna put a date
wait.
on it.
It's got 5 on it.
It said 5, sorry.
And there's a
5.
July 31st draft.
So
So we've got dates.
Yeah.
So you want the 8/23 draft?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you'll take what he did and see
I
if it
will.
meets your needs, and then we can discuss that next time.
Because
So,
I do see something that's already
okay,
Okay, good.
so
concerned.
you guys keep working on that. The other thing, one of the sort of rabbit holes we went down to last time, did we want to make a motion on, I think we're all dead, but, to allow the committee to add a witness to the hearing, a motion to determine who interviews witnesses during the hearing. I think let's work on finishing up
Yeah.
up to pre-hearing and then tackle this next time, or the,
I would ask the chair, is it, and just, this is out of ignorance, is it inappropriate for me to send something back to Neil?
No.
No,
Like,
that's
you
what
guys
as long
can
as
do
it's
that all week
one
long,
exchange.
yep.
Just the
it's-
two
it's
of us.
Two of you?
And I'm
Yeah,
looking
please.
forward to that.
Make you guys a subcommittee where you guys work through that, that would be lovely.
Okay.
Great.
Because if you two just agree on the rules, I think, because we'll all be happy.
Yeah, I mean, and, we could, in the interest of efficiency, right, like, I know that I'm handling pre-hearing, right?
Yep.
And I'm good with that.
Those
What
guys
if
are-
you guys started
The hearing?
a subgroup on the hearing?
The hearing rules, or do you
Right.
want to do the hearing rules and process?
Well, that's
And co-create a document to bring back,
what this does.
but I think between the two of you, so
Yep.
that we
Yes.
can,
Yep,
We
I
will bring,
communicate with Neil directly.
yeah,
we will bring back a revised 5.
awesome.
And this is 5.
Yeah.
and do you, Suzanne and I, we could work on that pre-hearing piece,
Okay,
based on what we know is before and
So I'll do
after?
the screening part, you'll do the
Pre-hearing.
pre-hearing conference.
Yep.
They're gonna do the hearing.
Right, and so that next week we'll come back with sort of proposals, things to review.
Yeah, because I think that will streamline a little bit.
Yeah, I think
2
so.
weeks, right?
2 weeks.
2 weeks,
Yeah.
yes.
Can we talk schedule a minute?
Yes,
So
yes,
it's
in fact, I keep
September-
adding that. So, it seems like 6 o'clock might be too early for you sometimes, or no?
It depends,
Okay.
depends on how quick I can get out of the building. But no, I'm okay with it,
Okay,
I mean, it's right to the line, but I'm okay with it if you're okay with that.
so I was going to propose last time that, I don't know that 3 weeks a month is sustainable long-term, where so many other committees are monthly. But I think in order to hit the goal of September, we still have 3 weeks in September, but then maybe we look at switching to a monthly or bi-monthly.
Oh, once we finish this, there's hardly any reason to meet unless there's a complaint.
Except for the
Or,
education piece.
Right. So,
I think if we can, and I'm the first person, like, I'm looking at my month of September, and it's interesting, but I think if we can sustain this pace to get this done, and then
and then switch to like a monthly.
Then, yeah, and to your point, like, we may have to convene, with a little bit greater frequency around building and training. And have to report in around, if we receive any correspondence. And there will have to be probably in October if we, if I timeline this, like, get it all done in September, have time for town council to review our packet. We could be looking at like, end of October, to be able to introduce it to, the Board of Selectmen at a meeting for public. I think a lot of people watch that meeting, so it would be a way to educate the public that we're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, one of the steps I had, and I think it's aggressive, given we need to wait till the lawyer reviews, is we need to really work on that communication
Yep.
piece. And so we can certainly ask to be on the agenda of the Board of Selectmen
Yep.
meeting. We need to put something in Where in the World.
Yep.
We need to put it on the website, so there's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, and we could have, I would like to ask that maybe there could be forms here, like
Like
some
printed out
paper
forms.
forms as well as available online, so that if there are people who are not comfortable with,
Right.
everybody would have equal access to just come to the town office and get a form or be able, and then fill it out and drop it in the box if they're not
Okay.
conversant with the website.
So for September, we want to do the same schedule. Does that work with everybody? The first, third, and fourth
So it'd be the
Wednesday?
6th, the 20th, and the 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The 6th, thank you.
6th, the 20th, and the 27th,
Of September.
September.
Then what we might want to do in October is a long ways. We might end up with 2 meetings in October because we have a communication piece and a response to the lawyer when that comes back. And then after that, we could move to monthly, maybe. Unless we have the floodgates open and then,
What did you say?
If, yeah,
Yeah.
I would be surprised if we are inundated.
I
I don't
think
think there's a
not.
pent-up reserve out there, but
no, I think. yeah.
education will be the biggest thing.
Right, I
so
think
far
so.
is there.
And then on a monthly basis, we work towards, if we start in November, monthly to sort of work on our education piece. Would you want that to work with April? We have enough time to sort of build something up. Awesome.
Sounds great.
That works for everybody? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?